this, you can view this on live stream at www.longmontcolorado.gov or on our YouTube channel. Look, can we have a roll call, please, Don?
Mayor Peck.
Present.
Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters.
Here.
Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we're going to jump right into the open forum. And the first three people I'm calling up are Sherry Malloy, Jamie Sizemo, and Rod Brandenburg.
Good evening, Mayor Peck, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez, and members of City Council. Sherry Malloy, 1632 Sherman Way here in Longmont. I had not intended to speak tonight, but I changed my mind after doing my 2-hour shift as a natural resources volunteer trail ambassador today. I went to Dickens Nature Area, and I'm pleased to say that I counted 115 people enjoying this special area, and especially the water on another scorching day. I only needed to suggest to one woman with small kids the importance of staying on designated trails, so that was all good to see. Dogs were leashed and people were being respectful of the land in St. Vrain Creek. What wasn't good to see, and the reason I decided to speak, is the horrible shape of the trees the city planted as part of the almost $10 million spent on Dickens Nature Area and flood mitigation. There are dozens of trees that are dying or dead because they are not getting watered. Some have water bags, but it's obvious they're not getting filled. I'm not alone in noticing this casualty. Recently, there have been 2 TC line comments about the deteriorated trees at Dickens and along the entire Greenway. Hundreds of trees have been planted as part of flood mitigation with many thousands of dollars invested. I understand the park department is short-staffed. And that's the reason for this neglect. Perhaps the city could hire a temporary contractor using the empty funds that empty positions leave available. This needs to happen now, or 80 to 85% of tree investment dollars will be lost, with lost time for growth and shade and expensive to replace. As you all know, I'm a wildlife and habitat advocate and activist. Tonight, Jamie will be speaking for our Stand with Our St. Vrain Creek group about our recommendation to protect our Rogers Grove bank swallow habitat. We are asking that protection language be included in the storm drainage bond ballot measure to pay for flood mitigation from Sunset to Hover. We want to support this ballot measure, but not if it means destroying our rare bank swallow habitat, the only known one in Boulder County. Please ask staff to include preservation language before you vote on this next Tuesday. As a concerned taxpayer and healthy habitat supporter who closely follows the city's flood mitigation plans along our precious St. Vrain corridor, I don't want to see my tax dollars used for flood mitigation efforts be wasted by neglecting vegetation and that will destroy our bank swallow habitat. I'm hopeful by bringing these 2 issues to your attention, both will be remedied so that all Longmont residents might expand their enjoyment and appreciation of our St. Vrain jewel. Thank you.
I did forget to mention that you do have 5 minutes. Sherry, do you want a conversation? This is an open forum so we can address your issues, or if you want someone to talk to this matter. It's a back and forth.
Sure, I only use 2.5 minutes, so I'll take the other 2.5 to hear some responses.
Okay, is there anyone here or from the city? I had heard, was it David Bell had said that we were protecting that and watching where the bank swallow has a habitat and haven't seen them come back.
Oh, they're back.
You've seen them come
Yes,
back?
they're back.
Okay. So on the flood mitigation, I would like to have an answer on that. Are we going to preserve the bank swallow with the RSVP?
My understanding is that the preferred plan the Army Corps has done, the preliminary plans, would destroy that habitat. And the city has said that they would try to replicate it, but it's not like an osprey
Right.
nest that you just put up a platform. Bank swallow habitat is not replicable. They need sandy banks. They survived the flood, only to now be taken out by the city's flood mitigation efforts. It's a travesty.
So I personally would like to hear what our plan is as well. We might as well hear it tonight. So what do you think, Jim?
Well, as I understand it, the bank swallows are in the Hover Reach area, which while we have a conceptual layout, we have not yet done any design, so I'm not sure how they'll be impacted. But I've talked to the project manager on the job, that we are aware that they're there.
Okay.
We haven't started design. I don't have a consultant on board yet.
Okay.
We know I've talked to Sherry several times. Kind of like we know they're there. We'll do our best and to avoid them. And then we'd also talked about having engagement early in the process as we get to 30% plans to see what's going to happen, but we'll do our best.
Great. Thank you for that, and keep us apprised of what's happening. Thank you.
So I guess I'm back to, we would really like to see some language in the bond, because we've been told before that we'll have opportunities to be heard and have our concerns voiced and participate, and that hasn't, that hasn't gone well for wildlife and habitat. So that's where I'm at. I want to support this, and in general concept, I absolutely support flood mitigation, voted for the other tax that we had for it. Realize that, but a lot of things get considered collateral damage for flood mitigation, and so the main reason why bank swallows are a species of special concern, also listed in our own wildlife management plan as a species of special concern, is for two reasons: flood mitigation and development. We have both of those things going on with this, the only known colony in Longmont, or in Boulder County, and the only one in Longmont. And while I'm at it, Sunday we're having a swallow celebration because they are here, so we'll have some scopes set up at Rogers Grove over where those are. We'll be meeting at Rogers Grove at 9 a.m. Hope to see some of you from council and the public there to learn about bank swallows. We'll have some birders there to help us learn more about them and why they're so special.
Thank you very much.
And trees,
Trees, okay.
Yeah, so, okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for the engagement. I didn't realize that was going to happen, so that was nice.
Good. Thank you. Jamie Simo. I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name.
It's okay. It's Jamie Simo, 517 Independence Drive. I'm here tonight, as Sherry mentioned, on behalf of Stand With Our St. Vrain Creek, a citizen action group here in Longmont, dedicated to protecting the St. Vrain riparian corridor from damaging development. We have been here before you many times, most recently regarding the Rivertown annexation. At that time, we implored you to require as a condition of annexation that the developer dedicate a conservation easement on their property adjacent to Rogers Grove so that the city might use that land for flood mitigation work. This would prevent the nesting colony of bank swallows at Rogers Grove from potentially being destroyed during flood mitigation construction. You declined. Therefore, we are here to ask that the city come up with some other way to bypass the swallow colony when they initiate work on the RSVP in the vicinity of Rogers Grove. We have several hundred and counting postcards from concerned residents asking the same. For those in the audience who are unaware, bank swallows are North America's smallest swallow species, an insect-eating bird that nests in riverine and coastal embankments. They can't nest in just any bank, however. They require at least a 70%, almost vertical slope, and sandy soils free from, or nearly free from, vegetation. They are colonial nesting species with high site fidelity that is rare and declining, primarily due to loss of their specialized habitat, including losses incurred as a result of flood mitigation work, such as bank armoring and channel widening. The small colony at Rogers Grove is the only one on Longmont protected land, and is one of only a handful of known nesting sites within Boulder County. We have heard that as there isn't even a final plan for what flood mitigation will look like in the Hoover Reach of the St. Vrain, and funding hasn't yet been secured, it's too early to talk about measures to protect the bank swallow colony. We disagree. How to protect the bank swallows should be one of the elements to consider at the beginning of a plan, not after one has already been drafted. I would argue it's too early to look at concept plans for development within the 100-year floodplain until flood mitigation work is complete, and yet these plans move forward anyway. The swallows, at least, are a known and fixed element. You will be presented shortly, likely next week, with a bond measure to pay for construction of the Hoover Reach on the St. Vrain. If this bond measure goes to voters for approval, we want assurances in writing that our tax dollars won't go to a project that will destroy this special habitat. I'd like to invite council, as well as the public, to attend our Save Our Swallows event this Sunday, July 24th at 9 a.m. at the Rogers Grove Picnic Pavilion. There you can find out more about these amazing birds and see them before they migrate south. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anybody want to address Jamie? I don't see any hands up, so thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Rod. And after Rod, can I bring up Bob Norris, Steve Altschuler, and Doe Kelly?
Evening, Council. Rod Brandenburg, Grandpa's Pawn and Gun, 104th 9th Avenue. Talk about guns with you folks again. I want to address first the 10-day wait with you folks. We audited our books in June this last year, sold approximately 260 guns, and 5 of those customers were new customers. So that means 255 weren't. It was either a pawn redeem. I know that's a really high number. Not really, but 255 people, they got their gun out through a pawn redeem or through a consignment or through a gun transfer or maintenance. So the 10-day wait, in essence, penalizes 255 of our customers to wait 10 days to get their own products back. Need to look at that. Yeah, the U.S. Constitution says gun ownership shall not be infringed. You're making them wait 10 days to get their own product back. Time to crime, according to the FBI, from the time people buy a gun till a crime is committed with is an average of 8.3 years. So the 10-day wait doesn't really accomplish much here in Longmont. There are 9 gun stores within 5 to 15 minutes from where we stand right now. 1 in Berthoud, 5 east of us, 3 east of us, before you get to I-25, and 5 more down in the Broomfield, Westminster area. So if somebody's thinking about buying a weapon, they can just travel 5 to 15 minutes, folks, to go buy it and not wait 10 days. The 21-year-old issue, the Ninth Court Circuit of Appeals in San Francisco called it unconstitutional. I think that was last month. In dealing with contract law, at least in our store, if a gun is under some type of consignment, a transfer, we're doing maintenance or repairs on it, or it's a pawn loan, we are entering into a contract with those people. Several of them are in here tonight. This 10-day wait, it's a government add-on of 10 days. And according to Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution, government cannot interfere with existing contracts. And that's the bulk of our business. I want to get some time to interact too, but domestic violence is up 400% so far this year in Longmont. People need to be able to arm themselves. We do that over there, and a lot of them are victims, so we're glad we can sell them again. So consider this crime to time. I have all kinds of statistics available for you folks. I'd be glad to share them with you. But I would like, if any of you folks have questions for me, I can answer all the questions that were posed at our last meeting. So fire away at me.
Do any of the counselors want to? Oh, Counselor Hidalgo-Faring, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to pull up some notes I had. I had met with a gun, the group, I can't remember the name, that's why I was trying to find the email. It came up kind of fast, so pardon, I'm going to try to look and ask at the same time. So, I would like to know your feedback. What can we do to ensure the safety of our public at parks? For the longest time, we thought schools were safe. Schools aren't safe. My daughter was a week old when Columbine happened. I'm thinking now she's 23 and that's become a way of her life. Shooting.
That was 24 years ago.
Yeah. And so, what can we do that now, we thought churches were safe. We thought movie theaters were safe, grocery stores, and everywhere it's exacerbating. It's getting worse.
It's scary.
It is scary. I'm a school teacher. I had strategically planned my room to have this giant bookcase. It's not even a bookcase. It's a giant cabinet that with wheels roll in front of the door. I've already had it planned with my husband. If I get shot in a school shooting, I want open casket because I want people to know what this looks like and what this means for us. So I want to be able to have conversations and come up with solutions that really ensure the safety of our people, of our children.
Is there doors or windows in your classroom?
Yeah.
You get the kids the hell out of there.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to take you for a tour in my building that was built in the 60s.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as easy.
Yeah, you get
I can't even get fresh air, but
Yeah. No, something needs to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And Councilman Waters, the Longmont Police, and 2 other gun store owners, we had a meeting, I guess it's 2 weeks ago, Tim.
yeah.
And we've already created a poster that we would be glad to post, and the other gun stores that attended would be glad to post. We want to educate the people too. I don't know. Form 4473, if Tim or Mayor Peck were going to come in and buy a gun, we are responsible for 59 items on that form. We have to make sure that it's filled out properly. And it's not our call when we sell a gun. We submit the information to the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and the FBI. And through the FBI, 9 other agencies, alphabet agencies, the CIA, Department of Homeland Security, they all are looking at people. And we've actually had the cops come in wanting to know where a customer just went because we just sold a gun to somebody who should not have got a gun. They were approved in error. So there's the human element. And they can, which way did they go? Well, they went down the street this way, but that was 20 minutes ago. So we got to figure out the human error factor. You got 400 cops at Uvalde a couple of weeks ago wondering what the hell to do. Well, go get that guy. That's what you're trained for. Sit inside and wait for orders. People are dying in there. Columbine. I know one of the 600 cops that was standing outside waiting for orders. Go in there and take care of that problem. And I mentioned to Councilwoman, you weren't here 2 years ago, but get parents involved in these schools. I mentioned parent patrols. Have the parents wander around these schools, the parking lots, the halls, and the perpetrator's got to get past these parents and past the SRO officer if they're going to cause problems. If you add another element of policing there, and the cops I've talked to would welcome that, the teachers I've talked to, the principals, everybody I've talked to said that's a no-brainer. It doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. Have parents patrol their schools. There's helicopter parents out there. I was one of them. But, our kids aren't in the school system anymore. But that's one thing you could do. It doesn't cost the taxpayer anything. And who has a more vested interest in their children's safety than the parents? Mm-hmm. So, that's one place to start.
Yeah.
And anytime any of you want to come and discuss that at the shop, please do.
So it was Neffy Cole from NSSF.
National Shooting Sports Foundation.
Yes, he's their Western States Governmental Affairs Director. So I had a really good conversation with him. And really, I want to look at solutions and having meaningful dialogue. I know one of the things that came back was arming teachers. That's not, as someone who's been in the profession 28 years, that's not a solution. That's not going to work. And I know that there's people arguing, would push back against that. That's looking at the dynamics. Even the last couple of years, this classroom environment has completely changed.
Sure does.
And, it would not be feasible for us to be able to protect our kids to that capacity. And look at how fast the shootings occurred at great velocity and magnitude, and just having a teacher with an arm when we had, firearm, when, we had a multitude of police officers outside Uvalde and who couldn't and wouldn't do anything.
Yeah, we have armed officers here tonight in uniform. There's probably a couple sitting out here plain clothes too. They're protecting a few of us. Why don't we have armed guards at our schools? This is 24 years later.
Yeah, and actually, I'm
happened.
gonna turn around. I know I kind of got off on a tangent of bringing it to school, but that idea, I wanted to make sure, also too, the school is one aspect of it, but as city council, we do not have control. We don't have authority over school legislation. So really, those are conversations for our school boards, and I would really recommend, please have those conversations, because I think that's in that respect. But for us at city council, we're looking at our public parks, our public spaces, our parades, places where a lot of people congregate. What are some reasonable, what are solutions?
Yeah, parks, I don't have an answer for you. Schools, I do. Get armed guards out there.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, we don't have any jurisdiction over that.
Well, 24 years later, nothing's been done.
Nothing has been done.
Yeah. And, we've got armed guards here tonight. That's what upsets a lot of people is government has armed guards and we pay for that protection. Why don't we armed guards at our schools? And I concur with you, if a teacher's not comfortable, but I'll let you know this, if the student body knows there's a janitor, a coach, a principal, there are armed people in the school. That's a deterrent. They don't need to know who. But law enforcement wants to solve these issues, folks. I mean, and Dan Haddad, I know he doesn't want guns in the schools. We'll have guns outside the schools like a guard. Do you folks know in China, here's the school system. There's one way in. There's one way out, and there's an armed guard there. They don't have those problems in other parts of the world. Israel, you've never had a school shooting because there's armed guards there. But I would welcome dialogue. Tim was there to talk about it. Thank you. I got to go catch a plane. I'm going out to Nevada to help my daughters.
Thank you, Rod.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bob Norris. And can we have Steve Altschuler and Doe Kelly come up, please?
I can't even comment on that previous discussion. I'm Bob Norris, 532 Rider Ridge Drive. I hope what I have to say makes a lot more sense. Oh, okay. I can hear me. I'm probably the only one that wanted to. So I'm Bob Norris. I live at 532 Rider Ridge Drive. I'm bringing up a topic that I've talked to many of you about in the past. I really think that a community that knows what the city council has been doing is a much better community. I think every citizen, every person, every resident of this community has the right to know what you're doing. I think you are all better if the members of this community knows what you're doing, because otherwise they're going to make it up. And you probably won't like what they do. Then there's the other 99% that really don't care. Well, not that many, but people don't care. And I think there's probably a relatively easy solution, and that's called a mail merge. You send us all stuff from time to time, and I think you can have somebody write up what you've done in the last month or so and mail merge it with some of the things you send it. I get a bill. You could stop sending me a bill for my utilities. That would be okay too, but you're not going to do that. But we do get the city line and we do get our bills. And I think you guys are smarter about how your system works, but please do that. I don't know if other communities do that or not, but I really think it's important. I think we teach our kids in the schools that they need to know what's going on in their community, and we're not doing it. And I see somebody over here looks like he's going to say something, but he never ever says anything at city council meetings, so.
Councilor Waters.
Are you finished, Bob?
Yeah, are you finished,
I don't
Bob?
want to cut you off, but you're right. I did want to follow up.
I've been finished a long time, Tim.
Well, that might be two of us. So I didn't want to cut your comment short.
No, that's
fine.
fine.
But I, because we have talked about this.
Yes.
Bob is a Ward 1 constituent. He's also a friend and a colleague in our early childhood work and an activist in the community. Bob, for you, what would be, is it the city line would be the most effective vehicle for getting that, a synthesis of what the council's
Well,
doing?
not in the city line. That's too complex. I'm talking about a mail merge.
Yeah.
Somebody in the city has the good common sense to say, these are 8 or 10 things most important for people to know. You write that up and put it on a piece of paper, and you just mail merge it. And that could go out either in the city line, because a lot of people get that, and most of us get a bill. It doesn't matter. Or you could spend a little extra money and just send it out as an individual thing. But I think it's a good investment in what the public needs to do. And when it comes election time, they're going to know what you did. That may work for you or
I'm not
against
going to
you.
worry
I
about
don't
that.
know.
It would be maybe helpful, Mayor Peck, if we could ask, I'm just curious, what would it take for us to do that? And I don't know if that's Marika or Rigo or Harold or somebody else, or what we've tried in the past and concluded that it works or doesn't work. I mean, in terms of the attempt to get more information pushed to the public on what we've been up to.
I think it would be all of the above that you mentioned, Marika, Harold. What I see is the interesting thing. I agree with you that we need to be more communicative, but there are so many divisions that are working on so many different things that I don't know what would be at the top of the list of importance for residents. We are continually working on housing, both affordable and attainable, on transportation, and I am going to have conversations with our transportation planner to have a community meeting on where we are on transportation in September. I've been trying to have the mayor quarterly meetings about what we're doing on certain things. That's where I get frustrated with not knowing exactly what it is that you would want to know about it, because we're always working on certain things continually. You mentioned in an email, Bob, about the Juneteenth. You didn't know when that was going to happen and where, et cetera. And that wasn't a city event. That was communities that brought that to the city.
Well, it wasn't the event it was the resolution. You made a resolution on its support, and you made a resolution about the LGBTQ community. And I agree that that's kind of difficult. And I know with the newspaper, somebody comes here and leaves at 10 o'clock, and my good friend John Fryer used to put in the paper whatever he thought he wanted in the
Exactly.
paper. So that's a problem, and the media is a real problem in this country. But you got to start someplace. And as far as housing, we always talk about the solution. We don't talk about the cause, and that frustrates me too. The cause, part of it is early childhood education, child care. We have only about 60% of enough child care that we got. So women aren't working. Women have only recovered 1 or 2% of the jobs they need. The men are getting the other 99% of the jobs. It's hurting our businesses. And you can't solve that problem, but you need to be aware of it.
And I agree, and I have asked, not recently, but a year ago, that we have a presentation by ECC to let them know what they're working on, where are you, where are we, because it is one of our goals, our work plan, early childhood, and that every child should have the right to be educated.
And we did,
but we didn't do that.
Didn't we make some kind of a presentation, Tim?
Yeah, there was. I think this is since then. This is a more recent
It was
request.
yes.
Yeah.
Well,
It was a more recent request, so I'll request that again because I agree with you.
we'll do it.
We'll do it.
Tim and I are both part of that.
Great. Make it happen, Bob.
I'll do my best. They don't always listen to me like they should.
I am now.
Okay, we'll do that. But if you don't get everything, you're going to get something. And I think when you start seeing the response from doing it, that'll give you some feedback of what you do. But we have a lot of things we need parks. I have lots of complaints. My wife has even more about me, but that's a different issue.
Okay,
But-
I do think the 5 minutes is up,
Okay,
so
well, let me just
real
say
fast.
playgrounds, interpretation, lots of things. I'll email you about all of them.
Give me a list.
I'll give you a list. If you do any of them, I'll be pleased.
Thank you. And to Marcia, Martin, I cannot see your hand all the time, so if you just jump in if you have a comment you want to make, okay? Thank you. Steve Altschuler.
Hi, my name is Steve Altschuler. I live at 1555 Taylor Mountain Drive. And this might bounce around, but I've got some notes. I want to start out by saying we are all blessed. We are blessed to live in the greatest, freest country ever created. America's Bible is a creation called the Constitution of the United States. I have copies here for all of you. If you haven't seen it recently, I'd be glad to give them to you. When federal servants like Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Jared Polis, and indeed every senator, congressman, and dog catcher takes office, they take an oath to uphold the Constitution. And I believe all of you do that too. I believe it's local and federal and everything. So the Constitution guarantees our right to free speech and the right to keep and bear arms, and of course many other rights also. But tonight, obviously, I want to focus on the Second Amendment, the right to keep and bear arms. On a federal level, this right was designed to protect us from an overreaching government. The first thing every dictator has done is to take away the guns of citizens. Countries like Cuba, Venezuela, Germany in the 1930s, that's the first goal of everybody that wants to take control of the people, is to disarm the people. On a local level, guns in the hands of free citizens, and I would say people that are trained, allow us to protect our family and our property from criminals that commit crimes. The definition of a crime is an act that is deemed injurious to public welfare and is legally prohibited. It's already illegal for a criminal, it's already illegal and criminal, excuse me, for a felon to have a gun. It's already illegal and a crime to shoot and kill other people. Criminals always manage to get guns, even though it's against the law to sell a gun to a convicted person. Even this weekend, a good guy with a gun killed a mass murderer and prevented a much worse situation. We have a constitutional right to be armed and to protect ourselves if necessary. Criminals will always get guns, and they love unarmed citizens. I think that's one reason why you're seeing, we were talking about soft targets, you're seeing more shootings at theaters and schools and churches because the criminals know that there's normally nobody there with a gun. And when they are, they're stopped when there is someone with a gun. Criminals are not stupid. They're going to go to the easiest place. I'm going to redefine that a little bit. We're not just talking criminal behavior. With the mass shooters, we're talking about people that just want to destroy other people. They're going to go where there's the least probability of anyone stopping them. And we were talking about teachers, arming teachers. No one says arm every teacher in the school. It's arming a few teachers that are ready, willing, and able to be trained to carry a gun, just like anyone else that buys a gun. I have a hunting license. I had to go to hunter safety class. You learn how to handle a gun. And if a teacher wants to do that, they should be able to do that. The ones that have no interest, we don't want them to have a gun anyway, because they wouldn't know how to handle it. So one thing I wanted to mention, in 2019, New Zealand passed a gun confiscation bill. By June 28th of 2020, New Zealand gun crime was at a 10-year high in just over 1 year since the confiscation. In 2014, New Zealand had gun-related death rate of 1 person per million. In 2020 and 2021, the rate was 2.4 per million. It had gone up 150% since they took guns away from citizens. A 2018 study in California by 2 gun control groups showed 0% change in homicide and suicide after the gun control laws were passed. So you're taking the guns away from people that want to be able to protect themselves, and it's not even helping the situation. Chicago has the strictest gun laws in the nation, and we all know they have the highest gun death rate and crime rate in the nation. Almost 1,000 gun deaths per year in Chicago.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay.
I do want to make a statement, and I don't know if the other counselors do. We have absolutely no authority over the school district. If you want
Okay.
teachers armed, if you want automatic closing doors,
I
whatever, you have to go to the school board and convince them. So,
But I still want to be able to protect my family and my property.
and the city council and the city of Longmont are not trying to take away your guns.
Okay.
I want to make that very clear. We have
I know
no
there's discussion, and I'd
intention.
like to be ahead of the curve rather than behind it.
We are not going to take away anyone's guns. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Dill Kelly.
I think that's me. Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, I was just sitting over here waiting my turn, and I figure, you guys know me more from my voice than from my face from the last 2 years, right? But, and I'm on about smart meters, and in this case about the bees, but I've gotten a new toy recently, and I'm sitting over here not doing anything without anything wireless live on my person at all, watching this little Safe and Sound Pro 2 broadband radio frequency meter dance between high and extreme, and then doubly extreme, while I sit over here and people moving around me with their computers, with their smartphones, etc., etc. A picture is worth 1,000 words. If you want to see what it is you're holding in your pockets and in your hands and what you're working on in terms of, extreme danger that you put yourself in. Where do you want your tumor? Do you want it here? Do you want it in your back pocket? Where would you like it? This will tell you what you've got going on. So anyway, that is my first little bit here, and I'm going to turn this guy off. Oh, we just had a surge up to 36,400 milliwatts per meter square, and the most I've seen of this thing is 445,000 milliwatts per meter square going along Ken Bratt 119 out towards American Furniture Warehouse. I have no idea where that much radio frequency is coming from. Now, with that said, imagine, if you will, 2 to 3 years down the road, when you go into your garden, what if you find no bumblebees, no honeybees, no butterflies, no wasps, no insects, no swallows, no birds? The lady was talking about swallows earlier. This is part of it. And this is already happening. So pesticides are to blame, but what if there's a wireless radiation critical component that we've overlooked in our haste to get to 100% renewable? Are we indeed already part of the lobster in a boiling pot scenario? Put a lobster in boiling water and it screams. Stick it in room temperature water and heat to boiling gradually, and the lobster doesn't notice. It's being cooked until it's too late. Not unlike being boiled alive in the invisible, non-ionizing radiation of ubiquitous electrosmog. 5G will only make things worse. Professor Ole Johansson, the brilliant and world-renowned Swedish EMF researcher, has turned his attention to researching the connection between electromagnetic field radiation, such as emitted by smart meters and wireless devices and infrastructure, and the massive decline we are seeing in the pollinators. His current work, which collaborates with other scientists, has a slogan: no bees equals no food equals no children. At our virtual smart meter town hall in March of this year, Professor Johansson was one of our expert contributors. We have his ear. I have his ear. I'm with him on email every week. He will come here if asked, and if we fund him to do so. He's a very humble man who will speak directly with all of us on this problem, which is also on the radar screen of our state. While EMF may only be a piece of this problematic puzzle of declining essential insects, the contribution that a wireless smart meter mesh network brings to our daily electrosmog dose cannot be ignored by claiming the technology is safe. Many scientific studies show the exact opposite. We have a world-class scientist willing to come to advise us. Will we step up to the challenge? And lest he remind you, should he come to Longmont, Lloyd's of London won't insure this technology against liability. What do big insurers know that we, the little people, do not? No bees equals no food equals no children. So you'll notice that I've got Ole's slogan printed on my T-shirt, and it also says, for the bees, just say no to smart meters, because I feel very, very strongly about this. And I'm selling them, so anybody who wants one, see me after the show. I showed you my toy. Right now, we're standing on the precarious ledge, the disappearance of pollinators and insects in our world. Will we adopt the precautionary principle and pull back from the insane rollout of smart meters? Or will we rush headlong over a cliff like lemmings, embracing this unsafe and unproven wireless technology to our detriment? I was going to sing for you, but I see I don't have enough time to do it. I'm a trained operatic singer, you know. I wrote a song called Colony Collapse Disorder, and I sang it at Fraser Meadows a few years ago. They loved it in my bee suit.
Thank you, Doe.
Mayor Peck, I have a notebook that I'd like to loan to you. May I bring it to you?
Sure, you can give it to Dawn at the end, the city clerk. Thank you. Bev Khalil. And will Roberto Sandoval and Marianne Nihas come up, please?
I'll take this off. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for your time, Council. I appreciate it. I'm a new face to Longmont. I've been here a couple of years, and I absolutely love it. I'm originally from South Africa. I live on corner of Hoover and Pike, and we're watching the traffic up and down a very small stretch of road between Plateau and Pike. I've been chatting with Caroline Michael, who's the civil engineer from Public Works and Natural Resources of the City of Longmont, and they've done a study. I believe it's an arterial. I'm starting to learn about the different roads being local, arterial, and there's one more, and I'm forgetting the name of it, but I guess Hoover is our arterial. We've got an entrance to the Lobo Trail right there. We have Olin Farms, which is an organic farm. We've got the Watersong community, and I'm the lucky person that now heads up the HOA there with all its fancy things that goes on. We're struggling with the speed of the vehicles that pass by. We believe it is an arterial. There's a classification for an arterial where speed is supposed to be quick, moving traffic from one area to another. We're trying to encourage people to walk the Lobos Trail. We've got children on bicycles. We've got parents with their kids. We had a school bus stop on Hoover, and all the children ran out and ran across the road. Caroline's study, she did a speed study just the other day, and she was kind enough to give me the results. The 85th percentile speed is what they look at, is 47 miles an hour. It's posted at 35. It's only going to get worse. We have construction going up and people are moving in, which is wonderful. But here we've got bikers, children crossing the road, not in any one particular spot. It's a small stretch between Hoover and, Plateau and Pike. I live on the corner, as I say, and I get to watch, as I sit on my deck. We've had one, since I've been corresponding with Caroline, we've had one accident on the road already. We've had one little girl that fell over and a semi-truck stopped just in time in front of her. I've been trying to document this as much as possible. I have photographs. I've been sending them to Caroline. We've got farmers who come out of that. They're a little Olin farm. It's the cutest little farm. And he uses his tractor. He's not quick enough to get into Hoover because of the speed of the cars. Two things, if I may. It's posted at 35. If there's some, we've called the police. They've sent cruisers out. They do their job. They try. They can't have a 24-hour presence. It's not possible. We understand that. We know the classification is an arterial. Is there any way to look at it and reclassify to a local road so we can perhaps get the speed limit down? Could we put cameras? We can't have someone stand there all the time. Could we monitor it in some different way? Can we enforce the speed? At the very minimum, can we enforce 35 miles an hour? We'd like to see it drop a little lower. Is there something that can be done? Please. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
I would like to say, if no one else on council wants to comment, I think that we are all aware of the speed of the different arterials in our city, and I understand completely what you're talking about. That there are a lot of children that live there. We are, as the transportation department, is looking at different cameras around the city so that we can actually get the license plate of the speeders, and that's in process. So I know it doesn't help right now today, but we are working on it and are aware of the problems and the growth, especially on that triangle that is going in on Pike right in front of Olin Farms. Will add congestion as well. So thank you for bringing that up. And I do want you to know that we're aware of it. We can't work fast enough and hire enough people.
And we appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just wanted, Caroline suggested I bring it and you at least note and get it down, and hopefully we can do a little more. But thank you for your time.
Thank you for the pictures. Send them.
You don't mind?
Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, Councilmember Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I'm going to direct this question at you, probably unfairly, right? So just say, I don't know.
Okay, I'll try.
Or I don't know, or I don't care. But just building on your request and the mayor's comments, you know, it's one thing for us to have cameras posted to track license plates. The other, I don't know if it's the other alternative, is photo radar, right? That automatically generates citations. We get a lot of input from the community via email and phone calls about speeding. We have a limited number of police officers, as you've said. They'll come out, but when they're there, people don't speed. Yeah, so there are communities across the country that have introduced photo radar to more effectively regulate speed for the very reasons that we would. You don't have enough personnel. We have 24 miles of streets that have to be monitored. What would be your reaction? This is the question. How would you feel about not just security cameras or tracking cameras, but photo radar? Because where that's been introduced, if we do this, I suspect we'll hear a lot of feedback. Like, we want you to regulate traffic, but not that way, right? But you have a reaction?
I'm a law-abiding citizen. I don't mind if you photograph my vehicle or my face. We have children on the road, and it's a safety issue. And whatever it takes to keep children safe and encourage a quality of life.
Great. I appreciate your thoughts. I do think this is a conversation that we're going to. I hope we're going to be in this conversation as a council with the community soon. And I don't know about this budget cycle, but if not this budget cycle, sooner rather than later, maybe into 2024. But that's an option that I hope we get serious about pursuing. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the question. I appreciate it.
City Manager Harold.
Oh, can I go or am I still here?
Let's see what Harold has to say.
So sorry.
He's our city manager, in case you didn't know.
I'm so uncomfortable.
Oh, have a seat. Have a seat, Bev.
So what I did want to say, there's a few things that we're working on. So obviously, when we look at some of the issues that we're having at our parks and our intersections in areas of the community, we are And we're prepping to give you all more information in the very near future on this, but we are looking at cameras really as a deterrent to a lot of the activities that have been plaguing various areas of our community. We don't have enough officers to be at all locations at all times, and then when you layer on priority calls, it changes even more. The Public Safety Department is evaluating speed cameras right now. That was really a derivative of the conversation that we had when we talked about transportation and what does the future look like. Councilmember Martin made a point in the budget request of how do we use technology to deal with these issues. So they are looking at that and evaluating it. Right now, we're trying to get through the first phase of the camera where we're seeing graffiti, where people are vandalizing our facilities and things like that, so we can get the appropriate video evidence that we need to deal with those issues. But they are working on that, and that is something that we're planning to bring to you, because you're right. When we put an officer there, people don't tend to speed, but when we have an officer at a location and we have calls popping, then that's a different issue that we have to deal with, and I think we're going to have to look at this technology to really deal with these areas. Not only are we looking at stationary cameras, but also I know Jeff told me they're looking at the movable cameras, so when you see the speed trailers and things like that, we can use those to target specific areas as well. So yeah, we will be bringing that to you.
Thank you, Harold. Thank you, Bev.
Thank you. I'm now leaving.
Okay. Roberto Sandoval.
All right, there we go. Mayor and Council, great to meet you. Roberto Sandoval, 2224 Tyranian here in Longmont, resident for 22 years, 21 years in Ward 1. 3 items for you this evening. First one is a public parks and open space request. Ward 1 is ready for Montgomery Farm to be developed, please. I think we're good. We've seen just about all the population density we've seen in that corner of Longmont. We saw the development of the apartment complex just south of 17th. We saw the infill within Providence, which is my neighborhood. I think we have one property left, which is that 2 to 3 acre lot that's on Sundance and 66. And we have a lot of residents who are just yearning for parks and open space access within those neighborhoods. Providence, my neighborhood, happens to have a trail around all of our open space that all of the surrounding neighborhoods are using today. We're trying to keep up with all the cleanup and beauty bans to give people trail access to where they can safely distance from each other. You can imagine pet waste and all of the expenses that go along with that. And then having a park access there for what would be young families, a lot of seniors in our neighborhood as well, a lot of single story housing. It's amazing. So I would say the neighborhoods in Ward 1, northeast corner of the city, ready for our equivalent of Stephen Day Park, whatever that might look like, and anything that you can do towards that project would be amazing. The other 2 issues that I have are public safety issues. One of them very similar to Beth, I think. The intersections of Alpine and 66 and Sundance and 66 are a beast. We have that blind drop that comes off of Pace towards Sundance going east on Highway 66. We all understand Highway 66 is a state highway. There's limited things that the city can do, but we would ask for your support in advocating for what would be reduced speeds, the ability to take left-hand turns from those neighborhoods and access the north part of the city. Anything that you can help us to address what would be safety concerns that we have today. As I mentioned, a lot of retirees in our neighborhood, very difficult to make left turns and access all of the businesses on the north side of the city. So anything that can be done in that regard would be highly appreciated. The last one that I have, it's been touched on a couple of times, but it's a matter of public safety around safe firearm ownership. It really is. We attacked this one, I think, for several years here in the city. We had a pretty good initiative going back to 2018 where a lot of community members participated in that effort down in near the rec center at the museum. I was one of them. I thought there was a lot of positive community input and then kind of petered out. It just kind of stalled out. We've heard statistics that are, I would say, foreign during the forum so far. I would love to hear what our statistics for the city of Longmont are. as I prepared for that meeting in 2018, as I prepared tonight, I looked at our city statistics on public safety. I can't find what first response events we had that involved a firearm in the city of Longmont. Not, it's like, we see for the city or for the state, it runs about 2 years behind. I think 75 out of 100 gun injuries are self-harm. Those statistics go back to 2020. But for the city of Longmont, if our public safety officials, if our fire departments respond, how many of those responses involve something where someone attempted self-harm? We don't have to know any of the PII, personally identifiable information around those individuals, but did that first response put that safety officer in a dangerous situation because a firearm might have been involved in that situation? It would be good to know that as a city. The other thing that I would mention, all of those measures from a public safety standpoint, they're reactive. Something's already happened or is about to happen, and we're now responding or recovering from. To me, there's still room for the first three phases of good security and safety frameworks, which are identify, protect, and detect. And most of those things come from policy and from information exchanges. So I would love to hear your thoughts on those three topics. Montgomery Farm, we'd love to see a park. Public safety around access to Highway 66 from Alpine and from Sundance. And then renewing that conversation on firearm safety and good data-driven conversations specific to the city, not what's going on worldwide or countrywide. Thanks.
Councilor Waters.
Roberto, thanks for coming tonight and sharing your perspectives. Just on Highway 66, I'm looking at Jim Angstead, and he knows that I was looking at him. I think, Jim, you can confirm this, that Alpine and 66 meets warrants for a traffic signal. Is that correct?
Yeah, this is where I get into trouble by telling you you're wrong. No, it does not meet warrants. We are anticipating that it will shortly as some of the construction is completed in the Prairie Village community. To that end, we've already started earlier this year. We released a contract to start the design of that signal. So we are underway, anticipating it will be the next signal that meets warrants or the next intersection that meets warrants. And then we have to get CDOT approval for that.
Right.
So we are in that process, and it is underway.
But we're close in terms of
I think we think
warrants.
it's pretty close. Tyler stated me before he left, that's one of the last things he did, and we've moved forward with it. So.
It may be, just for the sake of everyone, helpful to understand what are the kinds of warrants that an intersection has to meet. Just an example.
There's 9 warrants.
Yeah.
There's of which to warrant a traffic signal, you need to meet one of those warrants. There could be an accident history that will generate it. There could be that the installation of a signal would have prevented an accident. There is a number of counts, a variety of counts that there's 2 or 3 warrants for counts, proximity to the railroad, proximity to school, those types of warrants. Off the top of my head, that's about as good as I can get.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jim. And so it's it's coming.
Yeah.
The only, I'm sorry.
And then Sundance in 66, based on the information that I recall from one of our last traffic studies, that's probably never going to meet warrants for a traffic signal.
Yeah.
But we are anticipating the 66 in Alpine, and we're working towards that end.
Great. Thank you, Jim. The only other comment I'd make, Roberto, is you participated in the World Cafe process. That's what you're referring to from 2018. Maybe the only thing I would add, just to reinforce what you had to say, I don't know where we'll end up with legislation regarding firearms. I suspect we're gonna pass some. Right? We've had this conversation. Where it ends up, we'll have to see. But I've said this multiple times. I'll say it again, just because of what you had to say. That the easy part of what's coming is to change law, whatever that looks like. The hard part is to change culture. And if we're gonna have a safer community, it's the culture that we have to address, and we can only do that together, right? That requires leadership at every level, in every sector of the community, to lean in together. You know that better than I, but I appreciate you raising it, and I think there's going to be a call to action, I hope there is, to the community to say, regardless of what happens, no, as the mayor said, we're not going to take anybody's guns away. We understand the Second Amendment, but we also, are committed to reduction of violence to the degree that we can influence a culture that results in that. And we need you to be part of that solution. So thanks.
Anything on Montgomery Farms that?
I'll
Yeah. I'm not letting you off the hook on that one.
I expect you would not. So we have basically so many parks in the city that need to be completed. And we have a queue, basically a list of parks and the timelines and the budget on when that can be done. I don't have that with me at the moment, but if you have an email address, David Bell out there can answer that question for us. Do you want to talk to Roberto alone, or would you like to? Okay, Roberto, David Bell will chat with you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Mary Ann? And the next on the list is going to be, and I'm sorry, I'm going to really make this name not spelled correctly for me. It is, thinking it's Hubbard is the last name. Okay, great. And then Chris Allred and Christina Williams, if you want to come up and be ready. Mary Ann, go
Hi.
ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Yes, Joan Peck. Thank you so much. My name is Mary Ann Niehaus. I live at 762 Stone Ridge Drive. And I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I've been a resident of Longmont, of Colorado, 39 years, and of Longmont, approximately 37 years. I'm a concealed carry, and my husband is as well. And so I want to speak a little bit along the public safety, because I think it's, especially around our schools, I have grandchildren, that will be attending schools at some point in a couple of years. Twin girls on the way any minute now. But I wanted to address, ditto what Steve said, ditto what Rob said, and, knowing what the Constitution says. But what I wanted to share with you is who I am as a mother, as a grandmother, and carrying a gun. And the safety, I worked in Dallas, Texas when I was 18, 19 years old, and we all went to a safety course, right? I believe that is something that should be implemented either in the school districts or somewhere. And I know we can't really do that, but what I'm saying is if we had some type of city facility or something where people could stand up and get self-defense, right? So as a woman, I learned self-defense. It brought me awareness when I went to my car. It brought me awareness when I got to my home. And so I think getting awareness of looking around and knowing what's happening in not only in the community, but in your own personal space. Later, I took my concealed carry, because I traveled a lot with my son. I wanted to be able, if I broke down on the side of the road, you just don't know what's going to happen. And so I think what we're kind of missing here is being able to carry a gun and having that privilege. And I know you said you're not going to take our guns away. We're in Boulder County. I don't know what's happening over there and how that's going to spread over here. And so my concern is understanding what carrying a gun means, and I understand that you don't feel like teachers should, but I think if a teacher wants to do a concealed carry class, right, and learn safety and know what that means, I would much rather be carrying a gun when I was confronted in a precarious situation, which I have been, and I had a shotgun, and that person, all I did was point it at them. I didn't have to shoot it, but they left. And so understanding and knowing what a privilege is to be armed in a community. And that's how I think when you talk about community safety, I think that's how we're going to make Longmont safer, is by knowing the people. We already know who's carrying, right? Or who's not. But if one of those people are in the room and somebody walks in with a gun and they don't think there's going to be anybody there to deter them, you would feel much better knowing, just like we feel better, that we know that a police officer is here or there's somebody around. I've seen people say, been in situations where they're like, I wish I'd had a gun, because their safety was being jeopardized by the fact that they didn't have a gun. So it can also be a deterrent, but it's a safety. And so I feel safer because I carry a gun. And when you have that training and understanding, as a mom and a grandma, I know I can protect my children and I can protect the people around me. And I would protect you should anything happen. And that's all I have. And ditto to Doe, because she's all about the bees. And we need the bees because we need the children.
Yep.
I can't see my time, so I don't know where.
It is. You are at 5 minutes.
All right. Well, thank you
Are
so
there any
much. I
comments?
appreciate it. Does anybody have any comments?
I have a comment. You absolutely have the right to have that gun. And that we understand the Second Amendment. My feeling is that we need hard answers to these mass shootings and mass murders. And we all need to figure it out. And that's what we're trying to do. So any input other than telling us what the schools should do?
Right. Well, I think, yeah.
I respect your right to own that gun.
And I think that's the thing, is we need to support the people that are willing to carry, that are willing to be there and be the protection, And so I know we can't, we've got to talk to the school districts or whatever. But signage and, like Rob was saying, volunteers. I worked at the school when my son was there. I volunteered. Now, I wasn't carrying at that point, but I would have, had that been a situation, that it would have bettered, the school. And so the criminals are the criminals. They're not the citizens.
Thank you.
And so we need to understand that.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
So next we have Ms. Hubbard.
Hello there. I'm Jill Hubbard, and I live at 1323 Somerset Circle in Longmont in Ward 1. I'm concerned about the issue of the smart meter rollout, and I've prepared a statement that I'd like to read. The FCC policy does not recognize EMR, electromagnetic radiation, as a health risk based on their data, which is from 1996. Interestingly, insurance companies are encouraged to decline coverage against damages to health caused by cell phones, tower antenna, or smart meters. If not a health risk, why deny coverage for damages to health? Meanwhile, the members of the European Union make directives to protect people and the environment from risk of hazardous radiation. Before the EU regulations were enacted for compliance, radiation monitoring was performed, measuring the external radiation dose rate of the environment or objects that emit a certain level of radiation: laptops, cell phones, smart meters, microwave ovens, and Wi-Fi routers. The results are then assessed for possible effect of such levels that can impact human health, and the consequent interpretation determines the regulatory law. This was from a directive of 2013. What studies have been done on these risks in Longmont? What is being done in Longmont to protect the environment of living things? And I was curious about who's paying subsidies to replace the current analog meters, which I have read last for 40 years, with these smart meters that need to be replaced every 6 to 7 years. Are the customers of the city of Longmont solely responsible for the $14 million project through the increased costs of service over the last year and a half? If a customer wants to opt out, are they eligible for a rebate for monies paid for the pending smart meters? For a smart meter that is vulnerable to cyber attack, controlled remotely by the service provider and the consumer rather than the consumer, emits 60 times the U.S. safety limit of microwaves per square meter and radiation equal to 160 cell phones, a fire hazard when a power surge occurs causing the meter to explode, subsequently causing a home to burn. How much water and how long a time of dispensing that water is required to put out a burning lithium battery inside a smart meter? How many homes lost to fire in Superior and Louisville had smart meters? Was a power surge a contributing factor to the devastation of so many? The benefits to be gained in the rollout of smart meters, such as meeting a 2030 agenda of 100% renewable energy, how does the smart meter affect the source of the electric grid? The convenience of remote meter readings with the subsequent loss of jobs for meter readers and remote turn-off, shut-off services seem trivial to the known risks and undetermined risk of cumulative EMF radiation to the health of all living things. Who does the smart meter rollout really benefit?
Those are all good questions. Do we have any counselors that want to talk to this issue? I'm looking at Councilwoman Martin. Are you interested in commenting?
Sure. I would first of all like to say that there's not a lithium battery in smart electric meters. That the statements about the contribution to ambient RF from a radio in a smart meter versus the general ambient RF from all other sources in a municipality is misstated here. But first of all, the contribution of an advanced metering network is essential to the electrification of a city to eliminate fossil fuel emissions from domestic natural gas use and to enable renewable energy as the main source of electrical power. And so the consumer benefits of meter reading, of budgeting electricity, and of automatic cutoffs are the trivial last mile benefits of advanced metering. And before you get that, what you really get is, first of all, understanding your electric grid, keeping it safe and reliable as we move from static fossil fuel electricity sources to dynamic renewable electricity sources. And then second, after distribution management is demand management, where we match our use of electricity to the supply of renewable electricity. And those things are the things that help us battle climate change. It has nothing to do with turning off your electricity more conveniently. So most of the objections about smart meters are just logical fallacies.
Interesting.
Sorry.
So you don't feel like there's any type of a health risk from
Nope.
a smart meter?
No, I do not.
Thank you, Jill. Chris Allred.
Good evening, Council. Thank you very much for your time tonight to hold this forum and have a conversation with the community.
Chris, would you state your name and address, please?
Absolutely. My name is Chris Allred. I'm a resident of Longmont, and tonight I'm commenting on behalf of the Colorado Coalition for Prevention of Nuclear War. I just passed around a proclamation that was passed by the City and County of Denver on January 22nd, or no, I'm sorry, this was on March 22nd, 2021, to support the Global Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. This is a United Nations treaty. And I'm here tonight to ask if you could please also stand in solidarity with Denver and support this treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. I've been studying nuclear weapons and the U.S. nuclear weapon complex for the past 9 years while working with Rocky Mountain Peace and Justice Center and the Alliance for Nuclear Accountability. Much of this time I was studying Rocky Flats, which is a former nuclear bomb plant located 16 miles northwest of Denver. They manufactured 70,000 plutonium pits at that location. And the land at Rocky Flats is still contaminated. The cleanup was not nearly sufficient, and the center of that land is still an active Superfund site. Unfortunately, the federal government has opened Rocky Flats to public recreation, and they have gone so far as to invite school field trips to that contaminated land, despite 7 school districts in this region who have banned field trips to Rocky Flats, and that includes St. Vrain Valley School District. What's happening at Rocky Flats is an example of the serious injustice being conducted by the federal government and the nuclear weapons complex. The special federal grand jury called Rocky Flats an ongoing criminal enterprise. And that injustice goes further to other communities around the nation. The United States conducted more than 1,000 nuclear bomb tests. The vast majority of those were on Western Shoshone land at the Nevada test site. There are many sites around the nation that host the nuclear weapons complex, and the federal government plans to spend $2 trillion on nuclear weapon modernization over the next 30 years. Among many locations, uranium processing in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, plutonium pit production is ongoing in New Mexico, and there is a proposal for a new plutonium bomb plant at the Savannah River site in South Carolina to do the work that Rocky Flats did. Evidently, 70,000 plutonium pits was not enough. So, but the people disagree, and we are speaking out that we do not want our taxpayer dollars going to weapons of mass destruction. We do not want more contamination going to communities that host these bomb plants. The Savannah River site does not need more contamination in South Carolina, and the citizens of the world agree. The UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons thus far has been ratified by 66 nations and counting. To quote from Denver's proclamation, the alternative to serious nuclear disarmament efforts is the status quo, where countries will continue to develop nuclear weapon programs over time, and we will increasingly face a world that teeters on the brink of nuclear war. I believe Denver has done a courageous service to our nation by supporting this treaty. We must speak out locally to move the federal government to action, to de-escalate a new nuclear arms race that is occurring presently. Please join in solidarity with Denver and pass a resolution supporting the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Thank you.
Thank you for this proclamation, and since we just received it, we can't give you an answer tonight, but I'm sure the counselors will read it and we will decide among us if we want to join and sign on to this. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
You're very welcome, and I'd be glad to follow up by email so that you have a digital copy.
Good.
Thank
That
you
would be
again
great.
very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Christina Williams. And then can I have Eric Wallace, Strider, and Lane Whitaker come up? Lance.
Okay.
Thank you for correcting me. Christina.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, residents and Longmont City Council members, and thank you for your service. When I have asked people, why do we want smart meters? And they've often told me that it'd be good to go into the future, to move into the future and update those ancient analog meters, those meters that, but are those meters breaking down? Question mark. Are they in need of replacement? No. But we want to jump into the future. Well, I have news for you. Marconi went public with his invention, and that is that you could transmit information through the air wirelessly in 1897. So all of those newfangled devices you have in your pockets, they're not new. That's 100 years old plus. So that means that technology, the purpose of technology, is to serve mankind. And there is no service in throwing out systems that still function. This is exactly what you will be doing by replacing analog electric meters with smart meters. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm an electrical engineer. I build, troubleshoot, and get production made of printed circuit boards. We design products that are very similar to the smart meters. In fact, if you had a problem with your smart meter, I could probably troubleshoot it and fix it. And according to Google, 75% of all the world's silicone chips are all made in East Asia. There are major supply chain problems right now, and to get some electronics is just impossible. While just the other day at work, we were getting some boards made, we found out there were 2 components on these boards that were no longer in stock, and the expected delivery date was 2 years out. So what are you guys going to do whenever these smart meters need repair? Can you get all the parts? I know for a fact that you can't guarantee that you'll be able to get the parts 3 months from now. And so what you can do is keep redesigning the printed circuit board, because that's what some people do, to accommodate the parts that you can get. So who's going to pay for that design work? The citizens of Longmont? And why should we, when our analog meters work just fine? And if it ain't broke, don't fix it. What my company ended up doing was we bought a few hundred chips from an electronics dealer, and since he knew that you couldn't get these chips anywhere else, we were charged $36 for each one of them. They would normally have been $2 a piece. Who is going to pay for this? The citizens of Longmont? Why should we, when our analog meters work just fine? I get the push is to eliminate the carbon footprint, and we want to put a cap on Longmont's carbon footprint by using the smart meters remotely to shut off your power, so that instead of firing up another gas-guzzling electric generator, then we can just shut off your power. But what effect will that really have on the amount of carbon in the air when everyone in Longmont runs out to buy a gas generator to power their home during the city's blackouts, because gas generators also make carbon? I'm asking the city council members, have you guys looked into, and this is a direct question, have you looked into the documented fires that smart meters have caused? So when you overload relays, which you can easily do because you don't know what people have plugged into their house, when you overload relays, they can catch fire because they can draw too much current. Analog meters don't have relays because you can't turn the power on and off remotely with them. So $14 million. Let's see here. I make $40 an hour. That's 350,000 hours. That is 43,750 8-hour days. There are 2,080 work days in a year. So that means with the amount of money you have already spent, you have just given someone a full-time job for 21 years. Now, keep in mind that that's money you have taken from all of us. And money is trade for labor, and so you have stolen our labor. The city of Longmont deserved to be asked before we were committed to pay somebody for all of this labor you have stolen from us. Was it broken? Didn't need to be fixed. It will not stop the carbon air pollution because natural gas is still used for combustion to make electricity. It will not stop the carbon footprint because when everyone runs out to buy a generator, gasoline will still make carbon. Okay? Put this to a vote. Ask the city of Longmont if they want smart meters. No on smart meters.
Thank you, Christina.
Do I have time to ask a question of Marcia Martin?
Yes.
Yeah, because she's waving her hand.
She is. Councilor Martin, go ahead.
I'm ready.
Go ahead, Christine.
Okay. Well, okay, so my question was, I really would like to get to the heart of how this will decrease the carbon footprint in Longmont.
By enabling the transition to renewable energy. But you've got a number of things staggeringly wrong. The purpose of an AMI, and you don't call me honey, ma'am, okay? But the purpose of the AMI is not to shut people's meters off so that we can have rolling blackouts. It is to prevent rolling blackouts from becoming necessary by doing demand management and making sure that the supply of renewable energy matches the demand that the city is exerting on the grid, and vice versa, so that it's not necessary to fire up those extra gas plants. And the reason, and while the metering systems that we have now is still working to provide 1 meter reading per month for every household, the AMI not only provides a meter reading every 15 minutes so that we have a running picture of consumption on our entire grid and can do the mathematics of balancing supply and demand, can find the stress points on our electric grid so that the variable loads that we will have in the future with electric vehicles, with heat pumps instead of gas furnaces, with all of those things, do not destabilize the grid. It's to make something work that has never been worked before. And that analog metering system that we have now is not capable of doing that task. But we need to do that task, that much more complex task, in order to stop using fossil fuels. And that's the truth.
And we will stop using fossil fuels by everybody having solar panels? Is that what?
Oh, by having renewable power sources, including utility scale solar, utility scale wind, hydroelectric power, and solar panels on our homes, and batteries strategically placed throughout the grid. It is a linear optimization problem, and intelligence in the advanced metering system is what enables those different power sources to be optimized and to work properly. You can't do it with analog meters.
Can we get a document signed by you and or the city council promising that you will not have rolling blackouts like they do in Texas and in California and New York?
Well, the rolling blackouts are not caused by the renewable transmission because Texas and California and other places that have rolling blackouts aren't having them because of the renewable transition.
That's not what I read.
So Christina, thank you very much. And I am on the Platte River Power Authority Board, and we are discussing this. It is a transition, and we're all working together. We have never had a blackout with PRPA, and we are working very hard to work with the market on renewable energy to not have rolling blackouts. So it's an assumption that you're making that isn't there, and we are working very hard to meet our goal of 2030 of 100% renewable energy by 2030.
Okay.
And so thank you.
Great.
And
then you don't need switches in our smart meters then to turn our power off if you don't plan to have blackouts, do you?
We're not.
I feel better about that.
Oh, good. Well,
we can already turn your power off anytime we want to.
You have to drive to my location to do it, though.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
you. Have a wonderful evening.
You too. So we have Eric is up next. And can I have Deb McClintock, Polly Christensen, and Rosanna Jenny? Before you start, Eric, do we need a break, counselors, or bio break, or are we good? We're all good. You're on, Eric.
Good evening, Mayor Peck and council members. I'm here tonight, Eric Wallace, 339 Pratt Street in Longmont. I'm here to call your attention to a report that I just got the final version of in my hands today. There's been a draft running around. And it talks about land use in Colorado. And I'm sure that we'll be getting this into your hands quite quickly. It's it'll take an hour or so to digest, but I really do encourage you to read it. This report is the result of the housing crisis and the way land use impacts it. But it was started off, it says, by the Colorado Greenhouse Gas Pollution Reduction Roadmap, which was released in 2021, and it called on state agencies to work with stakeholders to explore options for how to best incentivize smart land uses. There's a relationship between greenhouse gases and land use. And it's super complex. I'm just going to hit a couple of the things that are in here, and you'll recognize that it is relevant to a lot of the work that's going on. I know Harold Dominguez and city staff are working on a number of proposals to our development code. A lot of it, there's a lot of nexus within this report and what the city's working on in terms of housing density, the way our codes and zoning work together, and having urban areas of the code and creating the density to make transit work and a bunch of other things. This report also references the Colorado Affordable Housing Task Force report that I've talked about in front of you, trying to quantify what is the housing gap. This report actually validates that number, and if you just do a straight interpolation, this identifies a housing gap of about 7,900 units in Longmont over the next 10 years. Existing gap plus forecast gap. It's in a couple of sections. It talks about current land use policies and some of the land use challenges. It talks about how land use impacts local government finances and the cost of infrastructure, specifically in the way the more you sprawl, the less you're able to maintain your infrastructure. So it talks about density and infill, how it impacts housing affordability, how it impacts supply, long commutes, and lack of access to job centers. It talks about how local land use decisions, being a home rule city, and Colorado having an unusual setup with that. Lots of home rule cities making laws that in a lot of states the state does. Talks about how it influences commuting patterns, regional socioeconomic equity, wildlife habitat, transboundary air pollution, state and regional infrastructure needs. It throws out some reference, but there's a bunch of links in this report at the end in the appendix. It talks about how Greeley has made significant changes to their development code to downsize minimum lots in low density areas and also medium and high density areas. It talks about how Rifle has incentivized infill development through 20% fee waivers. And they did a study showing that infill development can reduce their infrastructure maintenance costs by 31% because they're also sprawling around the edges. It talks about how Colorado Springs implemented innovative zoning to spur downtown development through changing height limits, reducing parking minimums, and addressing review process efficiency, and also implementing some form-based code changes. It talks about how policies legalize a wider range of housing in more locations. It talks about policies that add housing and mixed use to downtown urban corridors and transit-oriented developments. We've talked about that in the past. So there's a slew of really, really good, relevant stuff, and addressing our largest challenge. So I'm not going to read you the whole thing, but please, when you get this, take the time to read it because it will be very relevant as we discuss and debate the development code changes that city staff is going to be bringing to you here in the near future.
Eric, can you tell me who put out that report?
This report, which I got today, is put out by the Colorado Department of Transportation, the Colorado Energy Office, Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment, the Department of Local Affairs, and the Department of Natural Resources. And it talks about impacts on all of those different areas that those agencies oversee.
Great. Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck, and thank you, Mr. Wallace. I very much do look forward to reading that particular report. I do want to acknowledge that I'm fairly certain council members and staff received an email earlier today on behalf of Prosper Longmont, and having read through it, I can guarantee you that conversations I've had between city manager and the mayor and some other staff members is by and large in alignment with the recommendations that were put forward. But there are a couple things that, as you can imagine, are slightly outside of the jurisdiction of the city council. And one thing, this is actually maybe a request on behalf of the city to Prosper Longmont, because it's something that we're also going to work on, is that we're still having trouble as far as condominium development because of current state law surrounding construction defects. And while this is constantly lobbied at the state level by developers, it would probably get a lot more play from somebody lobbying on behalf of, say, an organization like Prosper Longmont, as well as the city. And I know that I plan to, as the elections happen in November, lobby whoever is our state legislators to really take a look at our construction defect law in the sense that condos would very much help us meet a lot of these goals. Because right now, the ideas that we're looking for to increase density do involve things like smaller lot sizes and things along those in that nature. But we're having a hard time with the condo specific piece, which would do very well in talking about mixed use in downtown and transit oriented development and things like that, versus being constricted to paired housing, townhome style housing, and very narrow density or high density but narrow lot line single family detached homes. And so it would just be something to maybe take a look at as far as lobbying our state legislature to give us more tools to really meet the need. And so that's just one thing that I thought I'd mention, because I know within that email it talked about condos being an important part of the mixture that we need.
I very much agree with and appreciate those comments. I've had a number of conversations. This is not my day job, so I'm trying to get up to speed on all of this stuff. And I know that you are as well. And it is your day job, but you guys got to be experts on everything. Witness all the diverse conversation today. But I've been talking to people that actually do build condos and getting the specifics on what the actual problems are within that. There are ongoing efforts still. I am happy to drive down to Denver with you and go lobby at the Capitol and lobby our legislature because it is part of it. We are trying to identify developers that do build that kind of thing. And we've got a couple that actually do build condos. And there are some people that are willing to do it. There are ways to insure against, the lawsuits that tend to come out of these kind of things. So collectively, you've heard of me say collective impact. Collectively is how we solve these issues, and I'm certainly willing to lean in, and it sounds like you're willing to lean in as well.
Thank you, Eric.
Thanks a lot.
Looking forward to that report.
I'll get it to you.
Thanks. Who do we have up here? Strider.
Thank you. I thought I got forgot, but what the heck? Yeah, there's so many things. This public dialogue and citizen input. There's 4 or 5 topics that would be great for a more of a gathering and input on both sides. And appreciate the way the council is looking at this. I got some things. The guns came up first, and I've been talking about that for the last 6 months. But a couple of particulars. There have been close to 400 mass killings in this country this year. And one of them, a few days ago, a good guy with a gun shot the bad guy after he had already killed 3 people. Nobody ever mentions a few years ago there was a teacher in Illinois that talked down a mass killer before he killed anyone. So you got one unarmed good person and one armed good person who each stopped a mass killing, but the guy with the gun, the guy had already killed 3 people. Well, Uvalde, everyone knew this kid he had lost it, he had grudges, he hated people, and his name was School Shooter. Everyone knew him as School Shooter. He dropped out of school in the 9th grade. And his dad went and helped him get $5,000 worth of guns in 1 week when he turned 18, so he could come in and kill all those people. And you had 375 armed police officers with guns and shields, and they were afraid of him, and they ran away and didn't do anything for, an hour and 7 minutes. Anyway, that's the game that we're having. As long as you have, they banned machine guns in 1934. It took 65 years before we started having all these school killings. And I think it was 10 years ago today you had the mass killing in the movie theater. Are you going to have armed guards every 10 feet in the country? Well, the Bush governor, Jeb Bush, said if Trump gets in, it will be the chaos presidency. Well, it was. And if it comes again, it'll be infinitely worse. Adolf Hitler learned that from Goebbels. Let's have chaos. That's the best policy. And then you can terrify everyone, and then you can have more people with guns. And so the gun industry is actively, that is their policy and has been for the last 20 or 30 years. So anyway, let me go on to one thing. The Secret Service system, they got serious after the assassination of President Garfield in 1881 and was getting more and more functional and better up until, when President Obama was elected. The first White House dinner, the Secret Service let 2 unknown people come into the first White House dinner, an Arab guy and his American wife. And they were letting President Obama know, we can let anybody in if we want to. And you have 2 little girls who are growing up in the White House. What are you going to do? Well, then in Colombia, he went to Colombia, and the Secret Service went there 2 weeks in advance, and they had drunken orgies and were telling the spies and the prostitutes all of what they were who they were and what they were going to do. Well, so first black president, then you got the Secret Service working on the other side. And one of the greatest statements in American history, I'm no fan of Mike Pence, but when they were going to take him and get him away so they could destroy the government, he said, I'm not getting in that car. And it was incredible. The Trumpsters, they were abolishing education. You put Betsy DeVos, and she's to destroy education. Public education never happened in the South until Reconstruction. When black people got in office in the state legislature, they created public education. Now there are moves out to abolish it. Who is running the game? They're trying to roll back the country to 1783. The Articles of Confederation. You destroy the federal government, all you have left is state power. It will not survive, and we'll have chaos. Thank you.
Thank you, Strider. Let's see, who's next? Lance Whitaker.
Yes. Well, hello, council ladies, gentlemen. You guys have seen me before. You know what I'm looking for. You know a little bit about me. I live at 1750 Collier. I've been in Longmont for over 40 years. I'm looking for a permit. I've heard a lot of things today, and apparently everybody here is giving me cancer because I'm the only one without a cell phone today. But I didn't come here to talk about that or guns, although guns don't scare me. But if you go out and buy 1,000 rounds of ammunition, that sure the hell scares me. The cost of a 30-06 round is over $2. The cost of a 7.62 round is less than 30 cents. That scares me. Ammo transparency might be something that the city could look into as a solution instead of guns. But that's not what I came here for. I came here for mental health and cannabis use. The current laws of cannabis use is that I can buy, I can smoke, I can have cannabis. What I can't do is I cannot smoke it on my porch. I cannot smoke it in my backyard unless I have a 6-foot privacy fence. And there is no social interaction with my cannabis use. Without social interaction, various mental health issues can develop, such as low self-esteem, depression, paranoia, and other hysterias. A lot of this can be removed by having social interaction and friends and family. So, again, I plead to you for my permit and open up any other time you have. Oh, I also have a unique perspective because I've also worked in electronics in Longmont, which is probably the reason why I don't own a cell phone, but that's for different reasons. And I've also been in a balloon crew for the last 5 years. So I've seen you guys develop the area from a very unique perspective.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Do we have any questions for Lance or comments? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. So first of all, there have been some conversations surrounding this portion of permitting, which would require licensure, right? And so first of all, we're having, I would say, very initial conversations with our licensing authority, which in this case is our municipal judge, as well as with our city clerk's office, who does most of the paperwork for said licensing. So we're in the very initial stages of exploring this possibility while also still monitoring the very novel, the very new licenses that have occurred in Denver specifically. So I would say that we're quite a ways down the road from starting to grant these licenses. And while it was a much different city council that settled on the limit of 4 dispensaries within the city limits, we do know that there are obviously dispensaries in unincorporated portions that are enclaves of the city, and we've talked about how to deal with that with both the county commissioners as well with our planning and development department, which is a little bit prior to Mr. Van Niemewagen's tenure with us. So these are all things that we have been discussing for years, and we are very closely monitoring how social clubs are being dealt with from a regulatory level, and also what that would look like in the city of Longmont as far as what kind of resources we would need to consider such licensing and regulation. And so we're at the very beginning stages of these conversations. So it's not going to be a fast process. I'm sorry to admit, but it's definitely something that's under consideration.
I'll just add on to that because we did say that we're only going to have 4 of these stores or retail outlets for cannabis. We would have to change that code, and council has not had that discussion at all.
I'm not looking to sell cannabis.
No, I think it would fall under the same permitting process. Am I correct on that, Mr. Van Nimwegen?
Council Mayor Glenn Van Nimwegen, the Planning Director. I was thinking of it more along the lines of Chapter 15, the Land Development Code, which would be, for a social club, I think we'd at a minimum need to amend that. And we did hear Lance, and we do have a staff member who's reached out to the Marijuana Czar in Denver. And our idea was we'd give you a short white paper of their experience and provide that to you as a report, basically.
Oh, that would be great. Okay. So there's your answer, Lance. We're working on it.
Can I get a copy of that report also?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
And like I said, I have a unique perspective because I've flown over, so I've seen your development.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good job. Deb McClintock.
Good evening. Good evening, Council. My name is Deb McClintock, and I live at 1100 East 17th Avenue. I've lived in Longmont for 25 years. I'm also an employee of the St. Vrain Valley School District, and Susie and I actually work in the same school. So I want to address the issue of the mental health, because it doesn't seem that all these ordinances or laws or whatever they're doing against gun ownership, it isn't doing anything. And people are still the criminals are able to get guns. And it only hurts mainly the people that are lawfully owning guns. It just doesn't seem to help. I think the issue is mental health. And I think doing the World Cafe that we did a couple years ago, I think was a start. But I'd like to call upon Longmont to, instead of going along with the rest of Boulder County, to actually think out of the box, like what you started. And I think we need to go back and address that, because we met those couple of times and then nothing happened. And I feel like that we need to revisit that, because the mental health is the issue. It's the drugs that the kids are getting to help with their depression and everything, their anxieties. That doesn't seem to be helping. It seems to actually be making things worse. We have a lot of angry youth. We have a lot of kids that are suffering from being stuck at home during COVID that has affected their mental health. And there's a lot of issues from that. But I would like to see if the city could get, like the churches, the community in general, mental health people together, and to have, again, some kind of thing, again, to get us all together and to be thinking about other ways we can deal with these issues. Because I don't think any ordinances are going to really help stop anything. You look at Chicago, you look at California, the places that have all these laws, there's a lot of crime that's going on, and there's a lot of shootings that happen. Obviously, it's not helping. So I would like to challenge the council and people in the community to get together and let's have a conversation, because a lot of it has to do with the person and struggling with issues, mental issues that they're having, or they're in crisis, that there's nothing there to help them. And I think we need to look at this in a different viewpoint instead of just saying, well, we're going to outlaw this or that or the other thing. So I'd ask the city council to consider, I don't know how you would do this. Councilman Walters, he had the idea, and maybe, working with people within the community, we can do this again and come up with something that will really work. And I thank you for the time.
Councillor Hidalgo-Ferring. Deb, we're going to engage with you. We're not done with you yet. Get back.
Not done with you yet. Susie and I have a lot of conversation.
I know, she's literally, we're in the same wing, so we've talked about this a lot.
And we're in the same issue at the school. The way the windows are, the way the doors are, it's not a safe environment.
There's a lot of things that I think, go to the school board.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to here, thank you for bringing up the World Cafe. So that was something that had started before I got on council. But I really, in reading the documentation, the input into it, I liked it. I think that's a really good start. You know me, I want to come up with solutions, and I want to be able to hear, what are all the impacts for different, I mean, we see it in school all the time. Somebody's decision, unintended consequences, and it negates what we're trying to do. So my hope is to bring that back. I know I read in the very end there was, next steps, and we have not gotten to those next steps. I would really like to encourage staff and us to really, take the lead on getting those next steps out for our community. But no, I appreciate you bringing this forward. So thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Let me just expand a little bit on the next steps in that report. We had 2 gatherings in the museum. The second, for those who were willing to come back, you might have been in that second.
I was there. I was at both meetings. Was taking a shot. That's a wrong metaphor. Making an attempt to take the 4 areas of common ground, right, that came out of the cafe. Reduction of violence generally in society, to do more and better with mental health. Education of all types regarding the use of firearms, safe storage of firearms, what people need to know to reduce risks of either intentional or unintentional harm that could come. And the 4th area was advocacy. Well, those are the 4 areas of common ground. Just, as I think about that, what we did then, if we were to convene the community today, it was a group of the willing, right? Whoever wanted to show up, showed up. My guess is if we went through a similar process, we'd come up with the same results. And those are the 4 areas, I think, no matter where you are on a continuum, from, the strongest Second Amendment advocate to moms demand action, those are 4 areas I suspect we could agree today. Here's what happened. When we brought those who were willing to come back, we asked people to kind of pick one of those areas of common ground, and then we provided a template for action planning. And whether it was a mistake or not, the decision was that the city supported that. The city didn't sponsor it, right? The city helped. We had a lot of volunteers in the city. The city allowed us to use the museum at no charge, but it wasn't a city activity. It was a group of the willing, right? There were some faith leaders and a few others. I'd only been on council a short time, and I didn't have a council hat on. I had just a volunteer hat on. And we tried to get people started with the action planning process. That was among the next steps. We provided a template for action planning, but what we were clear at the time that I couldn't, or the few of us who were part of organizing couldn't carry the action planning process. We were blessing it and launching people, to follow up, and that just wasn't enough. There needed to be more support for the action planning process. So I don't know, and we've had this conversation about whatever happens with ordinances. I kind of know where you are. Not that
Not that it wouldn't be necessary. It's just not sufficient, right? Or changing the law is maybe necessary. It's not sufficient to reduce your risks or the risks of every teacher and child or student in this city, or in a grocery store or wherever at a movie theater. It is, whether it's those four or something similar, we do need. It's an opportunity. We may be the only community in America that could pick it up from there, but it is going to require commitments of time and effort, imagination, goodwill, tolerance, the willing to listen. Rod was here tonight. He made reference to a meeting of proprietors of business that sell firearms, the district attorney, and our police department. I was invited to the meeting. I wasn't certain why, but I thought, heck, there's something to learn. And I learned a lot more than I thought I would in that meeting. One of the things I learned is these were people I don't know. They're not in my circles, right? But I was persuaded that the people, the proprietors in that room, wanted to be part of a solution, and they had ideas about solutions that it wouldn't have occurred to me. And I have friends who I've shared this with who have said, "You would invite gun dealers to the table." Well, yeah, if you want to solve the problem, they need to be at the table, and they need to be actively involved in the action planning with our teachers and with faith leaders and with service club members and with every other member of the community who cares about this. So I hope what you've brought tonight resonates with folks, whether we pick it up from where it was in 2000. It was in the fall of 2019 or the winter of 2019 that we did the action planning. We do have an opportunity, and I hope maybe this is the catalyst, the flame that sparks some reinvigoration of what we can do together to reduce risks of violence. Nobody's ever going to be assured, right? We can't guarantee anything. But we might be able to influence the culture.
Right.
For healthier
like
kids.
You said, the culture.
Yeah. And that's what, that would be my best and highest hope moving forward.
And that's why I thought, because the city could maybe send out like a survey or something, and people that would be interested, or churches that would be interested, because what we're doing is not working in general. I mean, look at Uvalde. That was heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And at least we should attempt to improve the situation. Whether it'll happen or not, I don't know, but mental health is huge. And because it's gotten worse because of COVID and the isolation.
This is just for what it's worth. I don't know if you remember. We actually provided a template when we brought people back to action plan, for action planning, right, as a tool. And we provided an example of what that template might look like around one of those four areas, and the one area we picked was mental health, and laid out a whole series of action steps that would have rolled up into a ballot question, right? We could have at least put to our community: are we willing to invest more in the mental health of every Longmont resident, and are we willing to tax ourselves to do that? It never got legs, but it just so happens that was the template or the example that we provided in the template.
Right, exactly.
So Deb, to your point, what we are doing with the city is putting thousands of dollars into mental health. Where we're going to use it is what we need to figure out, how we're going to use it, and where the best buck for, bang for our buck, not buck for our bang. But right now, I think that the consensus from what we have to work is for homeless, to try to get the homeless people into housing, and if they have mental health issues. But that's not the only place we should go. I personally, I'm not speaking for council, I think that the school district needs to do more. And Don Haddad might not like me saying this, but I think every single middle school and high school should have a psychologist. And I know that's expensive, but not a roving counselor who has 4 or 5 schools. So if somebody has a real problem on Monday because their family fell apart over the weekend, but they're not going to see that counselor or that therapist until Wednesday or Thursday.
And that's what we see in the schools, is that we need one psychologist that knows
per
those kids.
school.
Yes.
For middle school.
Because we
and-
see it in
yeah.
the elementary school. The
Yeah.
issues you would be amazed that these little kids are dealing with. And it's frightening what they have to deal with.
Right, and I
they
worked
need support.
I worked in an elementary school for years in SVVSD, and so I do see it. I saw it. It's heartbreaking, and we don't have enough counselors. So go to your school board.
Well,
Tell
that'll be the next
them.
stop.
Put out a bond issue for that.
But I think it would be helpful to bring in all of the community, not just school board. You know.
I agree.
The churches need to step up, whether it's like afternoon things for the kids, not necessarily with the school district, but just the church is offering, you know, a place for these kids to go or whatever, things for them to do, or somebody that cares about them.
So the city council a couple of meetings ago did give direction to staff to have another community meeting like we did and start that up again. So mental health could definitely be one of the major issues we discuss.
That sounds great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Polly Christensen.
Mayor Pack and councilors, Polly Christensen. I live at 410 Judson Street. I'm here because it's about 25 degrees cooler here than my house, so I'm really thankful. That's the main reason I'm here, but I'd also like to speak on 3 subjects. I spoke to you last week about the amendments to the Longmont Fair Campaign Practices Act. There's a one-word change that you could make. It doesn't require going to the ballot because the council previous passed a change to the Campaign Practices Act, changing it from businesses being able to contribute 3 times more than an individual, and that didn't require going to the ballot. So examine what needs to go to a ballot. But if you don't pass these 3 amendments now, or at least one of them, they won't take effect for a year after it's passed. So they need to be passed now, or this will never happen. It won't happen next time there's an election because it won't even apply to that election. It'll apply to the next election. And people will say, well, there are too many things on the ballot, so let's not do it now. So just get it done, okay? Second, a new report has just come out, a book called On Homelessness and Affordable Housing, written by Altern and Colburn, and the gist of this, I'm sure most of you have heard about this, is that homelessness is caused by lack of housing. And this is pretty obvious. I'm pleading with you to not rob the Affordable Housing Fund to preference so-called attainable housing. Because right now, 35 to 50%, depending on where you live, of our housing that is being built, that is for sale housing, is being purchased by investors. So we're just incentivizing investors by doing this. We need to address that issue of investors purchasing homes that should be lived in by families and renting them out to people who would like to have purchased those homes to live in, but now they have to pay rent for them. So I would plead with you not to do that. The main thing I would like to talk about, though, is something that I was never able to get any traction with when I was on City Council, which is, as commissioners of the Longmont Housing Authority, please consider single-parent households in your preferences. Next, the single-parent households are the most vulnerable and have the highest rate of poverty of any group in the United States. They, next to the elderly, they are the most totally vulnerable. There are 11 million single-parent households, and there are 15 million kids living in them. That makes 36 million people in this country who are living in single-family households. 80% of these are single mothers, and of those, 30% and more are living in poverty. These households, and this is true for male single-parent households too, but women have a 35% lower compensation than men. Single male households. So they are clearly the most vulnerable. They have no backup. They have nowhere to turn. These are disproportionately Black, Native American, and Latino. But all of these are people who really need a place to live for their children. Because if their children have no kind of security from month to month, they have no life. They have no future at all. And so just consider them as commissioners of the Longmont Housing Authority, okay? That's all I ask. Thank you.
Polly? Yes. Can you tell us what you quoted? What article did you quote that from?
Well, the statistics come from the U.S. Census and Pew Research, but the book that I cited is called Homelessness and Affordable Housing, it's not mental, it's not mental health, it's not drug, it's a long subtitle.
Okay.
But it's about homelessness and affordable housing. And that is the premise of the book, is that it isn't an issue primarily of mental health and drug addiction. Those play into it, but that is often the way people cope with being homeless in the first place. And because of our housing market, where people are thrust upon the tyranny of the so-called free market, they can't possibly even get into the market anymore.
Who authored that book again?
The last names are Altern, Altern, and Colburn, Colburn.
Thank you.
It just came out.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we had a couple more people added to this list, actually 3 more. So will Bill Rodriguez, Dwayne Lease, and Paul Tiger come up? Oh, is she? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Roseanne. Where is she? Sandy, do you want to turn on? Oh, you've got a microphone for her. Great. I should have known.
Daryl, can you hear that? Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks so much to everybody who was so accommodating. An awful lot of help coming in here today. I was fully ambulatory before April 15th. I was at the Boulder bus station at 1400 Walnut Street, and I was checking. Oh, can folks hear? There we go. Okay. So I was just simply waiting, thinking of going for a walk on the mall or thinking of doing several other things. And I didn't look visibly disabled at the time. And in any case, I was just checking schedules on my phone, looking down. And I was outside, and it was about 6:15 p.m., I think. And suddenly when I looked up, there was this woman, a white female, right in my face. And she ended up grabbing me and forcing me into the pavement and slamming me into the pavement again and again and again. And the only happy part of the story is that there was a good Samaritan. Oh, I'm sorry. The only happy part of the story, after this individual slammed me into the pavement repeatedly, is that there was a good Samaritan at the station that day. And so he intervened and physically stopped the attack. And his name was Jonah. And he was the one that I think I blacked out for part of this, because I remember going face down and then finding myself on my back. But the reason I bring this up is because it's obviously something I've got to deal with. I had a number of injuries because I was injured by a hit-and-run drunk driver a couple decades ago. But went through many years of rehab and came out of that and had a bad spinal cord injury, but could still pretty much do anything I wanted. So, but I do have health concerns, and everybody's been talking about smart meters, and I'm sure a lot of people glaze over. But I did want to add something about this story, because I feel like I listened to other people, and there were so many threads to pull together, and this woman that attacked me was homeless. And I've always had a lot of sympathy for homeless people, because I would contend that any one of us could eventually at some time be a homeless person or a refugee. We can't quite imagine what those circumstances might look like, but I do believe that could happen to any one of us. And my impression is that this individual, who's 36 years old and was much stronger and bigger than I was amped up on some drug. This has really challenged me. It's kind of a mind bender to now be the victim, because usually homeless people are the victims of attacks, not the perpetrators. But in this case, I've got to kind of be on the home team, because I was the one that was attacked. And there's going to be a court case, and we'll see what happens. She also took my phone, so the assault was basically gratuitous violence, because she could have easily gotten my phone without harming me, But that's that, and but I am concerned about. So I hope she gets the help she needs. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her, but I do believe that she probably needs to avail herself of services of some sort, and I hope that we can become a society where people do get the help they need, because in fact, I'm an example of what happens if somebody doesn't get the help they need. I think that's one way I look at it. I don't know. I've never seen any other side of her but the side I saw that night. But anyway, I was fortunate to survive, but I've got a long way to go. And I was very concerned, because I have a history of knowing something about cell tower, especially cell tower antenna farms. That I lived in Seattle, and they were being built on the top of low-income buildings. And I became a reluctant activist, because I knew a World War II veteran who just happened to know a lot about radio frequency radiation, and I knew nothing. I just thought, okay, they're building an antenna, so what? I didn't know anything. I just wasn't trained in this at all. And so to make a long story short, we happened to be living to one of the country's major activists on the issue in 1996, and he was a pre-med student, and he decided this issue was so important that he had filled his whole apartment with all these studies from all around the world, even at that time. So I became aware that this was actually a problem. There was a scientist in Seattle at the time who's an emeritus professor now, named Dr. Henry Lai, who with his partner found, in the 90s, in 94, they published a study where he and his colleague found DNA damage in rats, that were exposed to frequencies far less than our cell phones.
So Rosanna, this is a heartbreaking story that you're telling.
I'll just get out of that let's just leave that alone for a minute. What I really wanted to come here for is that I thought I had followed all the protocols to opt out of the smart meter. I was grateful that I read that in the Times Call that the council did provide a way to opt out, and so I am sensitive to the electromagnetic radiation, and I have, especially perhaps since I've been injured. So I was especially concerned, so I thought, I sent letters to the folks at the Longmont Power and Communications. And I thought I was talking to one of the people there, and I thought I had covered all my bases. But I just was told yesterday that they're going to do an install tomorrow. And I essentially spent all night trying to figure out what to do, and then all day on the phone, just talking with various people, the city clerk, and I learned a little bit about how the system works. But what I'm hoping is that there is what I'm trying to, a point I'd like to make is that an opt-out really isn't that beneficial if it's not conclusive, if it's not comprehensive, I should say. Because if you are trying to minimize your exposure to non-ionizing radio frequency radiation, what ended up happening is they're saying we're not going to put the water meter on your property, but they're going to put it right in front of the house regardless. So,
who did you talk to in?
I talked to two folks that work in the water department. They're really kind about it, but they basically just said we don't have an option. We have to put it in the public right of way. But to me, it's really not an opt-out if you still have a meter right in front of your home. Just maybe a step off of your property, but nevertheless right in front of your property.
So I see our city manager, Harold Dominguez, is here to engage with you on this.
Yeah, I'm hoping something can happen because they're saying they're just going to come tomorrow, and I'm quite distressed because it's, for all of us, our home is kind of our sanctuary, and we all do things to try to make ourselves feel safe, and we all, have various ways that we do that.
So
and I feel that, given that there is, at this point, strong research from all around the globe, especially independent research, like Henry Light pointed out that 75% of independent studies show negative biological impacts.
So let's hear what Harold has to say.
Yeah, so Bob was involved in that conversation, and Bob can probably join us if he needs to. But so generally, this is not the AMI meter. Okay. So we do have an opt-out on the AMI meter. This is not that. This is the water meter, which is not the same technology. It sends a signal to the readers for the water bill. Typically, when we have these issues, and what they're saying they will do is we're not putting this on the property itself. We're actually putting the water meter pit in the street, in the city's right of way, off of the property line for this home. And so we don't have an opt-out program on the water meter side. What we do is we put those meters in the street, in the city right of way, off of the property line, in this case. Part of the difference is the electric meters outside of the ones that are on the pedestals tend to be on the home. Mm-hmm. And that was the opt-out component of that, and the different pieces of it.
So do they use the same 5G technology for the water meters?
No, it's a much different signal.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Marianne?
It's Rosanna.
Rosanna, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I guess I'm a little perturbed because the letter states, the doctor writes, we respectfully request that the utility opt Ms. Jenny out of the installation of any electronic or wireless metering device in or around her residence. Any such installation, including a smart meter pit installation, would jeopardize her health. Instead, we request the accommodation that only analog electromechanical meters without electronic or wireless components be used on or around her residence. So I sort of feel like that should take precedence, in my view, over, being kind of forced to have this, it's sort of like, I don't know how to describe it, but it doesn't really feel like an opt-out if it's still there right in front of your house.
But it's not the technology that the AMI is using, the 5G. It's not that technology.
I understand that, but I just was reading, like, an appeal that was signed, I think, by about 240 scientists all around the world, asking for basically, better regulation. It's called an International Appeal. Scientists call for protection from non-ionizing electromagnetic field exposure, which includes all the kinds of smart meters. And they say, for example, that medical professionals need to be educated. Media should disclose experts' financial relationships with industry when citing their opinions regarding health and safety, et cetera.
So, is this a smart meter?
No.
No. What technology is being used in it?
Bob, you want to help me?
Yeah.
Well, Bob's coming up. When we mean by smart meter, this is not a two-way communication.
Okay.
This is just reading the number that is on the water meter itself.
Is it analog?
It's not analog, because analog would be wired, so.
Okay.
Mayor and council, can you hear me?
Yes.
So the meters that we use in our water utility are our Wi-Fi meter that sends out a really low signal every few minutes so that it can be read and then recorded. And we record, the data that we mostly record is just the usage and whether or not there's a backflow in the meter. It's a very small battery. In this case, it's would be located out in the roadway. Her home is actually surrounded by these meters. There are probably many more of them that are closer to her home for the other water users in that neighborhood than than the one we'll install. So this is the problem we have throughout the city, is that when we have a request to preclude any kind of electromagnetic exposure to a household, you really can't do that. And I've gone and plotted these in many cases where we've had the requests, and the meters, the Wi-Fi meters are, ubiquitous in the city now. So anything you do wouldn't have any impact anyway. But what we're concerned about in particular is the city's right-of-way has a lot of wireless communication in it. Mm-hmm. And if we start shutting down the use of wireless in our right-of-way, we're in real trouble if we want to modernize the city. So in these cases, we do exactly what we did. If we generally ask them to, if they don't want it in the house, to pay for the meter pit and move it into their yard. And if they don't want to do that, we generally ask if they have some kind of a medical notice or testament that would say that we shouldn't put it in their yard. And then we do the next best thing, which is to move it out.
Put it on the city property.
City property, yeah.
Okay.
I wonder if there's any way that a person such as myself could be accommodated as the doctor requested. Because I understand what you're saying, but I was exposed to a lot of people that were, looking at the science on this. And so it's a valid concern, honestly. It's not one that it takes quite a while to immerse yourself in it and really look at everything, but there's a lot there to think about, and the scientists are asking for manufacturers to make safer technology and so forth.
So,
and
Rosanna,
we're not at that point.
Perhaps a one-on-one conversation, sorry, Bob, with Bob or Harold would be better.
Okay.
I really appreciate use of
that,
your
because
time.
I feel that, I'm very concerned about this happening tomorrow. It's kind of really, it's been extremely stressful, honestly, because I want to feel that I'm doing, that I have a healthy environment. I'm sure all of us do, and I would want that for everyone.
I think for me, from my perspective, the challenge would be that we would disrupt the whole program that we're putting in place if we individually placed or didn't place these water meters to an individual's expectations. It's a city program and project to move us into the future to where we want to go. So as a council, we have accepted this project and agreed to do it. So I don't think that we can actually help you here. So I'm suggesting that you can carry on the conversation with staff.
I guess I just wonder if I even have any time to, because I feel like I didn't get much time to try to work something out. It sounds like it's just like, you know, we're gonna do this, regardless of, you know, the letter that I sent and so forth. I thought that that was all I was required to do to opt out.
Okay.
And we're essentially looking at 3 smart meters, 2 from the city, the water and the electric, and then
But the
eventually a
water
cell.
is not a smart meter. It is not.
It's not an electromechanical
So
analog meter,
Bob is,
you know.
has another comment for us.
Okay.
I did want to say that, and I enjoyed our conversation yesterday for an hour and 10 minutes. And it was one of we have about 6 hours of time in conversations, and this has been going on since March. So
Oh, okay.
it has been a dialogue, and I'm not unsympathetic. I understand this. All we can do is work from what we know. Unfortunately, EMF hypersensitivity is not a medically known and recognized diagnosis in the U.S. So our regulators say that these meters are fine, are useful.
I have a paper here that says it's a.
If we have some different information, then we would react differently. But it's the same thing with our water treatment system. We often hear you shouldn't use chlorine or you shouldn't use alum because it's harming my health. And we couldn't run our utility with that perspective. So
Exactly.
I know this is tough, and I know it doesn't give the answer that people always want, but I'm not sure we know what else to do here.
I think in this case, we're accommodating to the best of our ability. I think there is, this is not new. So we have been installing these meters at least 10 years. And so, you know, in terms of the water meter component, we're at the end of that installation process. And so that's why it's not, when we talk about AMI and smart meter technology, this is a completely different system that we're talking about here. And so, you know, typically when we get these types of situations, because this is not the first time we've had it, the resolution typically is that we move it into the street, in a pit in the street, in the city right of way, on the city property, to get it as far away as we can from the house, but still deal with our operational needs. And that's the resolution they came to, which is pretty consistent in terms of how we've dealt with these issues with other individuals.
So Rosanna, I think that I personally support staff here and what they've done. So at this point, I don't know where we can go with this. So
I wonder if I could be allowed to speak. The last thing I hadn't done, I guess, is to speak to Harold Dominguez, who is right here.
So if you want to take this offline and maybe go to the back and speak, that would
Okay.
be better because we do have others
Sure.
waiting to speak.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your time, and I hope that, you know, I hope something can be worked out.
Good luck. Yes.
Thank you.
Bill Rodriguez.
Okay.
Oh, Bill, would you mind if we took a short break? Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to come back and Bill Rodriguez. Should be short and sweet.
Good evening. My name is Bill Rodriguez. I'm at 1477 Mayfield Circle here in Longmont. Been here since 2018. And I am currently sitting as a member of the lending subcommittee of Prosper Longmont. And just wanted to give you guys some quick updates on some of the things that we're doing and hoping to bring some value to the conversation. We have put together a coalition of local banks that are very, very interested in this, helping to solve this particular issue as the market forces and dynamics with rising interest rates and market appreciation has challenged many home buyers. We are trying to encourage local banks to open up their portfolio programs and create expanded guidelines to serve the market needs of the consumers here in Longmont and Boulder County. We are working directly with Fannie and Freddie to create the variances needed to be able to serve these families up to 100% financing, in some cases without mortgage insurance, at a below market interest rate, to try and extend a little bit of relief that is very much needed. We are also working with the Colorado Real Estate Association and the Colorado Mortgage Lenders Association to get some legislation passed. Legislation that was previously put in front of the state legislator, that is a home buyer savings account. In this case, it's a revision of this bill that will tie directly to local businesses and try and address this workforce housing problem and create this home buyer savings account. Tax incentivize the employer to fund that on behalf of the employees and tie it to their retention for 2 to 3 years so we can add to the stability of the community. So I just wanted to bring some of that to your guys' attention and encourage more dialogue with us as we are rolling out some of these initiatives and get your feedback and make sure that it is helpful to what you guys are doing.
Thank you. I'm very interested in finding out the results.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome. Dwayne Lease.
Mayor Peck, council members, my name is Dwayne Lease. I live at 2686 Pearl Howlett. I live actually outside the city limits of Longmont, but own a couple of businesses and have been involved in the community for over 35 years. One of the things that is really important is we have campaign financing issues and transparency, which is really an important aspect of society at this point. We essentially are living in a time when elections and the veracity of our government and our systems of control of the society are being questioned and being brought forward with great challenges. I think it's extraordinarily important that the City Council consider and think about campaign finance issues because it combines two control functions within the society. One is government, and two is finances. And the two of those together can create a positive feedback loop. What do I mean by a positive feedback loop? If you have money, you can affect the politics. The politics can affect the financial position of the people who make the financial contributions into the system, so that more money can create an environment that will make it more conducive to make more money and also control the politics. We here in Colorado, in Longmont, had the issue with Western Resources, which was, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago, which was a national organization, not local. And then there's ALEC, which is also on a national level. We need to protect ourselves against this. So I would ask you to make changes immediately, as soon as possible. The whole political system is under attack and under scrutiny. Act now. Act strongly. Make it happen. Because one of the arguments that's being made is democracy doesn't work, nothing happens, it doesn't get done. So it's up to you. You have the responsibility. You have the possibilities. Me, I have my voice. That's it. I'm here right now to speak to that. So you need to know about transparency. Who are the people who are financing the people who are running for city council, as an example, or who are backing particular issues on the ballots? And it needs to be something that you can be assured that it comes down to a person. One person, one vote. I own a couple of LLCs, or have a couple of LLCs. I don't know why I should have any more access to influencing elections because I have an LLC. Well, whoopee-doo-dah. That's money. That's all it is. It's a way of controlling your liability flow so that it doesn't roll up on you. There are reasons for them, and there are good reasons for them. But when you come down to financing a campaign, you should know who the people are. It should be defined down to the persons and the people, the individuals. One vote, one person, one vote. Do we live in a democracy? And you have the possibility to be able to take a stand, a strong stand on this. And I can say I'm proud to be living in Longmont, or darn near close to it, and having a business in Longmont. And it is a cultural issue. And I have to agree that, like the violence that's in our society, there are more ways that violence occurs than physical violence. There can be economic violence. There can be verbal violence. And there can be the violence of a little beeper that goes off.
A 5-minute violence. Thank you, Dwayne.
Thank you very much.
Paul Tiger.
Greetings, members of council. Paul Tiger, 350 Kimbark. I actually did not come to talk about campaign finance reform. I actually came to talk about Third and Alpine. But before I go there, I thought I'd some comments that were made earlier. So the cafe, the World, what was it? I can't remember
World Cafe.
It was World. And I participated, and I wrote some letters to the editor, and one of the letters to the editor was about safe storage. And so there are people here tonight said, well, what happened to that? We never did anything after that. No, we did. Legislation came out of that. Legislation that is safe storage. A safe gun is a gun in a safe. And so I'd say that something did come out of that. We did make progress. I thought it was actually very good progress. I've talked here about this before. I had guns stolen, and I was responsible to keep them safe. And every time I hear of a gun stolen or a crime committed with a gun stolen, I think about those guns. If I'd have been responsible, I'd still have those guns. They wouldn't have hurt anyone. I came actually tonight to talk about 3rd and Alpine. I had talked with folks from Jim and other folks behind me about a crosswalk. So I had about 3 or 4 years ago, I got a chance to look at a handbook of applications put out by the city as to what kind of a crosswalk might be located there, and I believe it would be a lamp on a cable, or it could be a flasher in the center. Maybe they set it off with Wi-Fi. But that's really what I'm looking for there is on one side of the intersection we have lots of workforce people living, and on the other side we have an industrial park. They've been asked to walk down to the intersection of Lashley and cross there and then walk back up. People don't do that. They cross the intersection. It's very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. And that's really why I'd like to have someone look at that. Earlier in the year, I was told that they're gonna pave that, repave that. So I was asked not to go out there with a rolling pan and a roller. But you know me, I'm into criminal mischief. We really, though, need to have a way for people to safely cross that intersection without going a block away, turning around, and then coming the block up. By the way, there's a medical clinic there on the other side of the street, and people are not going all the way down and coming back. That's it. By the way, on 9th Avenue, there was a crosswalk that was installed. It's along the Kensington Ditch, and it actually has a flasher. And I've crossed it a couple of times with my dog, and I can't imagine the number of people crossing there may that qualify, whereas the intersection where there's an industrial park, it doesn't qualify. I'd see people crossing the road on foot. So I did actually have one thing to say about campaign finance reform. Lest anyone here misunderstand, I really am a libertarian, and I don't want anyone to be limited. If people vote with their wallet, and however much money they want to give you, if it's from Longmont, they want to give you $5,000, that's fine. It's a local gift, right? But I don't want an LLC whose origin I don't know, and we don't know who's in that and where it came from. So really, though, it's reporting. Who gave the money? If you gave money to a campaign, aren't you proud of it? Aren't you endorsing that person? Why are you hiding? That's all. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I won't be out there with a roller pan, but it could happen.
I hope not. Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Paul? Yes. You gave your address tonight of 350 Kimball.
I did.
You do that every time you speak to us?
I do.
So you choose not to share your residence?
I do.
Why is that?
So, I don't know. It was 2005. I was Mr. Open Carry. I ranted and raved about guns, and then my house was robbed, and so I don't give my address anymore. Okay.
So how does that square with transparency?
It squares with privacy.
So people who donate to a candidate,
Yeah.
and I'm down with the address.
Yeah.
Now, I when we come back around, I should have asked the question last week. I would assume that people with a post office box, that would be as good as a mailing address.
I would have gone with mailing address.
Well, I won't. That along with the post office box when we get to it.
Okay.
But the same reason that somebody might be concerned about their address being in the public record is the same reason that you stand there and give us an address that is made up week after week.
I get it.
So why in their expression of political speech would you expose them when you won't expose yourself?
I get it. I don't have the answer for you, but you've made me think about that. So.
Okay. That seems like a real clear double standard. Good for them, but not good for you.
Well, no. Here, I'm not running for office. I'm not giving.
No,
money
neither
to
are they.
No, I'm not.
Neither
giving,
are the people who are donating.
Not giving money.
And that's their form of political speech, just like what you're doing tonight.
No, I'm not giving money to a candidate.
You are actively engaged in political speech tonight, exercising your First Amendment right, which is what we're here for.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that somebody does when they donate to a candidate.
Okay.
And you're saying to them they should be exposed. They might have the same concerns about privacy that you do. They should be exposed or don't exercise their political speech when you get the chance to stand there without being transparent and exercising yours.
Okay. I like it. You've made a good point.
Well, we're not finished with it. When we come back and talk about ordinances, there's more to talk about. I'm just curious what your response was.
No, I like your point on that. You know, it makes me think that people should have privacy. I have that privacy. I could be giving up my address. People can find me. I mean, it's not that hard to find me. So,
thanks.
All right, thank you.
So that is it for our speakers. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak? Seeing none. Mayor and council comments? City attorney, do you have any comments? City manager? No comments. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Councilor Hidalgo Faring, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez. Let's do a hand. All those in favor, raise your hand. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Marcia.